Thank you. Welcome to the first of our Safe Harbor trainings. This one's specifically about Safe Harbor. This is part of a larger initiative. StreetWorks got funding from OEO to make sure that outreach workers were trained in working with sexually exploited youth. And they gave us a large enough grant to make these trainings pretty robust and extensive and allow us to invite members of the community. So as we roll out trainings for our StreetWorks outreach workers, we're also rolling out trainings for the community, which is why this is such a large group. I want to introduce Lauren Ryan, the Safe Harbors Director for MDH, and Beth Holger Ambrose, the ED for the link. Thank you very much, you guys. I just want to let you know before these guys get started, bathrooms, we have gender-identified bathrooms at the front, and we also have bathrooms off to the side of the cafeteria through that door. If you need to refill water or if the coffee runs out over here, next door again in the cafeteria, we've got those kinds of things as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here this morning, afternoon, right in the middle, wherever we are. Again, my name is Lauren Ryan, so I'm the Safe Harbor Director at the Minnesota Department of Health. Just out of curiosity's sake, how many of you are a part of the StreetWorks Collaborative and do street outreach with youth? A few of you? Okay. Do we have other advocacy groups, youth advocacy, youth workers? Good. Anyone from schools? Good. Who else did I miss? You can just shout it out. Interested community members? I must have got everyone. Okay, great. So we are going to talk to you this afternoon. I knew I would do this. Technology and I do not get along. You already told me that, and I'm not going to follow your instruction. All right, so we have a few different presenters, just as Jim said. So I'm going to do the first half, and I'm going to cover what safe harbor legislation is in Minnesota, and then I'm going to talk about what our service delivery infrastructure looks like. And most importantly for you, I'm going to tell you what resources are out there, so you know how to connect youth with appropriate services if they've experienced sexual exploitation or sex trafficking. And then I'm going to turn it over to Beth and her wonderful group and staff from the link to talk about what services they provide and some best practices for working with youth. And in between there, we'll get to hear from something called a regional navigator. And these are a really important resource, so you'll get to hear directly from them that work in the metro on what kind of services they offer and, again, how you refer them for those services. So there's several different states that have safe harbor. You might hear it across the nation. Please know each state is implementing and processing this differently. Each state has their own legislation that looks a little bit different. So here in Minnesota, we are really trying to shift the criminal justice focus so that it is not on the youth, so that we have victim-centered trauma-informed services for the youth, that we have child protection involved when necessary with the youth, and then we're going to shift our criminal justice focus to the perpetrators. Now, when I say perpetrators, who am I referring to? Buyers, yes. Who else am I referring to? Sellers, exactly. So that's where we want our criminal justice focus to go, not on the youth. They should not be penalized for this activity because something is being done to them. They are not doing something wrong. We recognize sexual exploitation as a public health issue in addition to a public safety issue. So we just talked about the public safety and wanting to shift that criminal justice focus. We also have a lot of our programming and a lot of our grants out of the Minnesota Department of Health. So that's a really new perspective. I don't know of any other safe harbor in the nation that has the leadership for this at the Department of Health. And that's so we can start using a public health model, looking at such tactics that you guys use that are very effective as harm reduction, meeting youth where they're at, not coming in and forcing services upon them, but giving them information and options so that they're ready to come talk to us whenever they want to. and really using those harm reduction tactics. And there's some other things we're trying to utilize through public health that I think makes this program really unique. We also try to come at this from a multidisciplinary approach and multi-jurisdictional. We look at this statewide. This isn't just a metro problem. It isn't just greater Minnesota problem. This is statewide. And we need all sorts of different professionals and community members in order to identify and refer their youth in for services. So that includes all of you in this room. That includes our partners in law enforcement. That includes child protection. That includes schools. Everyone. Everyone has to work together on this issue because no profession can come in and solve this on their own. So some of our learning objectives, and I went over this briefly. I'm going to talk about kind of the development, what our state statute looks like, how we've received funding, and then what we're doing with all of that funding. What resources have we created throughout the state, and how do you access those resources? And then Beth will go into some of the best practices and guiding principles through No Wrong Door and how to work with youth. At the Minnesota Department of Health, we came up with a working definition for sexual exploitation. You'll hear lots of different definitions depending on where you're looking at. We have a federal definition for trafficking. We have a state definition for trafficking. This is what we've created to determine who's eligible for services under Safe Harbor. So our statute is very specific that they have to be under the age of 18. I know there's lots of limitations with that. And we have some advocates working really hard this legislative session to maybe increase that to 24 for services to align it with our Homeless and Youth Runaway Act. But this is the definition we came up with, and it's incredibly broad. So minor commercial sexual exploitation occurs when someone under the age of 18 engages in a commercial sexual activity. This activity occurs when anything of value or a promise of anything of value, and this can include money, drugs, food, rent, higher status in a gang, is given to a person by any means in exchange for any type of sexual activity. A third party may or may not be involved. So we very intentionally made this broad. This is much broader than sex trafficking that we traditionally think of. Trafficking, we traditionally think of a third party maybe being involved, that there's a trafficker, an exploiter, what some refer to as pimps. We want to make sure that this catches when someone is out on the street, or maybe they're not out on the street, maybe they're living someplace. But for whatever reason, they're engaging in this activity, whether they say it's consensual, whether it's because they have a lack of options to choose from and have to engage in this behavior, whether it's to feed an addiction, we don't care. We still say, you shouldn't have to engage in this, and we're here to offer you services whenever you're ready. Any questions on this definition? I went into this a little bit, but just to give you a visual. So again, sex trafficking composes of this little part at the bottom. But what we're talking about is much broader. So we are talking about the commercial sexual exploitation. And then even beyond that is sexual exploitation in general that doesn't have a commercial element to it. So our services are focused on that commercial aspect. And we did that for a few reasons, because we wanted to allow, well, I should say, we noticed a niche or a population that was experiencing this, and there wasn't services for them. Whereas we felt like sexual exploitation or sexual abuse, sexual assault, that there were services developed and we had referral sources, but no one was serving youth that were engaging in this for commercial purposes. So that's the niche we're trying to fill with this. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the difference, just of the difference between survival sex and what the definition that you had just explained on the previous page? So like, if they're a minor, if it's just survival sex, just, you know, norm, I don't know, most of the
So it's really focusing, I would consider commercial sex. Sorry. Sure. The question was, what is the difference between survival sex and commercial sexual exploitation? I consider them one and the same. It's really hard to think of an instance where someone is engaging in survival sex, but they're not getting anything in return, right? Unless you guys can think of an instance. And that thing can just be anything of value to that person. So again, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be a place to sleep at night. Let me just go back. And we even put in higher status in a gang, because that is of something of value to that individual. So, go ahead. Very good question. So we had to cut it off that it's the age. They have to be under the age of 18 when they get referred into services. Now, if they turn 18 while they're receiving services, that's absolutely fine. We're not going to just cut them off there. But we had to draw the line somewhere. So if they've come to your attention and they're already over the age of 18, then we have to look at some additional resources. And not to say that you can't refer those individuals to the navigators or other service grantees and ask them, where can I refer this individual since they're over the age of 18? They should have that information as well. Other questions? Good questions. Yeah. I've learned never to try to determine what the legislators will do. I have no idea. I think it makes very logical sense when we look at how our federal systems are designed and our federal legislation to align it with the Homeless, Runaway, and Youth Act. Makes perfect sense to me, but that's just my 2 cents. And I can tell you that the advocates that work on this do a very good job and have been very successful in the past. So our safe harbor law in Minnesota, there's different pieces to this, and it gets a little convoluted because different parts of it went into effect in 2011, and then different parts went into effect in 2014. But here's our summary. So first, we define sexually exploited youth. That's not the definition that I just showed you. Like I said, there's so many definitions out there, but this is actually a definition in statute in our Child Protection Code. So they define sexually exploited youth, added it into the Child Protection Code. We increased the penalties against purchasers. We excluded sexually exploited youth from the delinquency code. So this means that if you are a youth engaging in acts of prostitution or engaging in acts for hire for a sexual activity, you can no longer be charged with a crime. And that just went into effect August of 2014. So you can see the delay, some of these things in 2011 down to 2014, and that was intentional. Legislators said, we want to decriminalize this, but we want there to be services or a model or structure in place to be able to respond. We don't want these youth just going through a revolving door where they encounter law enforcement or different service providers. They have nothing, they have no resources, and they're stuck in the exact same position that they were before, not able to get out. So in the meantime, a group of stakeholders came together and developed something called the No Wrong Door model. So really the essence behind No Wrong Door, and you have the experts sitting in the room right now, Beth Holger Ambrose, who is kind of the brainchild. So if you have any idea or any questions about the backing of it, please ask her. But No Wrong Door means any door a youth goes through, whether that's contact with you individuals, whether that's contact with a school, whether that's contact with child protection or law enforcement, that professional will know how to identify sexual exploitation and then where to refer them for services. So everyone over here is to be trained on exactly those pieces. What is sexual exploitation? That this isn't a bad kid. That again, something is being done to them. That they are being exploited. And that they need to be referred for services. So, and then this is the referral process. So I mentioned regional navigators, so I'll talk about what those are. And then I'll talk about the supportive services grants that we have. This is how the model is supposed to be working. And you can see it's systems and non-systems all combined. It's systems like child protection, law enforcement, working with community organizations, NGOs, to provide the appropriate services. There were certain values and philosophies that were agreed upon during the development of this model, and I think it's really important to highlight these. You'll see I have some quotes in here. There was a great document just released. It was called Voices of Safe Harbor, and you can Google it if you want to take a look, but there was focus groups of youth that were exploited, some youth that were not exploited, and adults that experienced exploitation, talking about what it was like for them and what information they wanted professionals to know when working with them. So, of course, those who come in contact with youth should be trained to identify this. Youth who are sexually exploited are victims of a crime. I can't emphasize that enough. Now, we use victims in this room. I use victims, the term victim, when I'm presenting. Obviously, we don't want to use that terminology with them. Many do not self-identify as victims, and Beth will talk about this. This is their means of survival. This could be completely normal for them. So it's not our place to come in and shake up that normal or tell them what they're doing is bad. But again, to let them identify whatever they're feeling so we can identify it for them, but really caution you on the term victim and calling anyone a victim. They need to get to that place on their own. So that's our professional terminology that we use. So victims should not be locked up so that they know it's not their fault. And again, another person said, some victims may not see themselves as victims. And I think that's true. I feel like for almost 85%, or the vast majority, do not see themselves as victims. They should not feel afraid, trapped, or isolated when they're receiving services. And I know I'm kind of speaking to the choir. I usually present to law enforcement and other systems people that need a lot of help getting to this point, because sometimes their idea of working with youth and keeping them safe is locking them up. And sometimes that's in detention, or sometimes that's in other places where they do it for their own safety, because they feel like the only way they can keep them safe and away from their trafficker is to put them in a locked facility. But the quote is, don't push the help. Come as a friend. Be open. Don't judge. And again, I'm preaching in the choir. You guys know this. But if you judge someone, these individuals that have experienced this are some of the best people readers I've ever met. They can tell if you're judging them or not, and they will shut down and no longer engage or talk with you. Sexual exploitation is traumatic, and services, of course, have to be centered in trauma-informed and victim-centered and survivor-informed care. Services should be responsible to the individual. It's not one size fits all. So however they're identifying their gender, however they're identifying their race, needs to be, and of course age, has to be taken into consideration. Services should be offered statewide. Again, like I said, it's not a metro thing, it's not a greater Minnesota. We're seeing numbers all over the place. Youth have a right to privacy and self-determination. Again, this gets a little tricky when we're talking to systems folks and telling them that someone who is a minor has a right to keep some information confidential, and that it's okay if they don't want to share that until they're ready. Now, I know mandated reporting comes in, and there are some certain obligations that you must adhere to, and the best piece of advice I can give you about that is to be honest with the youth. Be straight up with them about what your obligations are, so they know right up front before they say anything else on what will happen. Services should be based in positive youth development. Again, this is not a punitive program. This is about acknowledging their strengths, empowering them to reach the goals that they set for themselves. Not about us coming in as adults or professionals and telling them what they have to do, but it's really about positive, strength-based approaches to empower them. And we are at the Department of Health, so we have to talk about prevention and acknowledge that sexual exploitation is preventable. If we didn't believe in this piece, it would be really hard for me to get up every day and do this work. Because I do know it is preventable. The problem is that it's so connected to so many other social norms in our culture. We think of some of these really big issues that it's steeped in: sexism, racism, poverty. It's all connected about that, and we really have to start having conversations about all of those to be impactful on sexual exploitation. We have to talk about pornography. We have to talk about all these issues that are really uncomfortable, but that's the only way we're going to make any progress on this. And we have to start talking about demand. Who's purchasing these individuals? Who's exploiting these individuals? So we were very fortunate in Minnesota and received funding, a lot of funding. We've received over $8 million to build this infrastructure based off of those values and those philosophies. What we've done with that funding is we have some going to training and protocol development. We have a number of grantees across the state that are developing housing and shelter. And then we have our services and now our outreach for sexually exploited youth. So the coordination piece of this is we have different state agencies that are involved. So my job is to make sure that state agencies know what their part is in this, that they're engaged, that they're contributing, and that we're all talking and we're all working together. Because the Minnesota Department of Health can't do this on their own. We need everyone to help us out. And then we provide grants to regional navigators, and these are really the people on the ground that are doing coordination in different regions of the state. So we've divided the state up, and we'll show you a map in just a second. But they have a really big job. So they're responsible for doing training and outreach. They're responsible for knowing what services are available in their region for sexually exploited youth. Where are the gaps? Where are we missing services? And then a lot of them provide direct services to the youth themselves. So if there's not a service readily available, it's their job to provide, could be the case management, could be the youth advocacy, could be transportation, whatever that youth needs. Many of them provide that directly to the youth. As I said, housing and shelter grantees, and the map with all of the grantees listed on it was a handout. So you have all of the contact information and the names of all of the grantees. We have 6 different grantees right now. They're located all across the state, and they provide a spectrum of housing. So we have the link that has emergency and transitional housing. We have 2 more shelter beds up in the Duluth area. Heartland Girls Ranch is another one that's more of transitional housing. They're out in Benson. We have Brittany's Place in St. Paul that provides shelter. And then we have Tubman that will be providing more transitional housing here coming up in March. Who am I missing? I'm missing one. LSS Brainerd. So they are doing an interesting project. They're doing a pilot project trying to train foster families to work with sexually exploited youth. So I think that will be really interesting and a good resource that we can tap into. Here is our beautiful map. So you can see the different regions. These are really big regions. These poor navigators have tremendous workloads in trying to connect with each individual county, assess the services, and to do outreach to the youth. So we will hear from Allison and Christy in just a bit on the metro regions and how they work, and again, how you can make referrals. You can also see dots for our service grantees. This is not comprehensive at this point. We have a lot of gaps, but we're at least starting to make a dent. And we really do hope to secure more funding because we do need more services specifically for this population. I will touch briefly just on protocol and law enforcement training. One of the first things that the state appropriated was money so that law enforcement, who in many instances are the first point of contact for these youth, are trained so that they are responding appropriately and not inappropriately. It was a big shift for them to change their thinking, so I think this was a really good investment. We've had thousands of officers trained across the state on sexual exploitation. We've had investigators, and now we started training prosecutors on this. And then we have protocols coming out. So the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault has been working on this for about a year and a half. They've convened about 15 different teams. Each team represents a different profession or a different kind of tension point. So we had teams on schools. We had teams on youth advocacy or housing or shelter. And then some of the tension points had to do with detention. Should we be using detention for this population? If we're not, what else can we use? What are our other options? Is it legal? Is it not? So a lot of good conversations happened through that. These protocols should be released, I'd say, anywhere between the next 2 to 3 months. They'll be available online. Anyone can check them out. And each chapter will be concerning, like I said, a different profession or one of these tension points. And they're not protocols as in you follow step 1 through 10. These are protocols that you need to actually sit down with your multidisciplinary team or those you work with and work through the issues that are identified in them. They're more like guidelines than they are actual protocols. All right, my last piece, I just want to talk about evaluation. Again, we're at the Department of Health, and it's incredibly important to make sure that we are being effective in the services that we're providing. If not, we need to know about that right away so we can change it. We have to do reports, our evaluation every 2 years, so we just had one. You can see our regional navigators served 163 at-risk or sexually exploited youth, and that's a really important point I forgot to mention earlier. Even if they haven't disclosed sexual exploitation, if you believe they're at risk, if you suspect that they've been exploited, please make those referrals anyways. Safe Harbor grantees can work with at-risk populations and really commonly do, so please make those referrals. Our service grantees worked with 121 youth, and we've housed 74 youth, and these are numbers from 2014. We have had some successes. We have had some challenges. If we didn't, I would be worried, because if we're not making mistakes, I don't think we're learning. So I think it's absolutely okay that we've made these mistakes and made our changes along the way. Some of our successes, it was crucial to train, especially law enforcement. We have a lot more training to do, but I think we've seen successes from this training. As I said, we're very fortunate that we have funding to build this infrastructure. Not a lot of states do, so that is a huge success. As you saw on the previous slide, youth are actually being served. It was a little slow at the beginning. I think a lot of us thought, hey, we have this awesome program. We're going to open our doors, put our sign up, and the youth are just going to come in. Nope, didn't work that way. So we had to change how we were going about things. And then the multidisciplinary approach has been very effective. Challenges. So this debate, locked or unlocked facilities, where should they go, has been ongoing. And I don't feel like we've even reached a resolution yet. I'm sure Beth will touch on this a little bit. But there's just something philosophically wrong that if we're going to call them victims, if we're going to build up this infrastructure to treat them as victims, why would we lock them up? What message are we sending them? And it is much more complicated than that statement, but in some regards it's not. But this is an ongoing debate. We've had some issues with mandated reporting, what should be a mandated report, what shouldn't be. Lack of identification or systems not being engaged. I can tell you in Minnesota, our child protection and welfare system is really trying to play catch up, trying to figure out what their response should be. So if you are getting a varied response from child protection or child welfare, that is normal. Please reach out to your navigator or service provider, though, because these individuals work with those particular systems all the time. So if you're encountering barriers, they might be able to step in and assist where we're getting nowhere. And then identification of clients, as I said, has been a challenge. We haven't done a very good job at the state level of getting the information out to the youth directly. Been doing a lot of trainings with professionals, those that engage with youth. Now we need to start shifting our focus to get the message out to youth themselves. And you can see some of the recommendations: expanding the age limit, more funding, and more services. Any questions? Sure. Yeah. So we usually call that expungement in Minnesota. So if you have committed a crime and you can prove the legal language is a nexus between the criminal activity and your victimization in that crime, then you can ask a court or a judge to expunge your record. There's another thing called vacation. Yeah. Sure. She had asked if there was any remedy, as she knew some other states were working on, if someone was committing crimes at the time that they were trafficked or being exploited in some way to get that off their record. So like I said, expungement, and then some states, and I think Minnesota is kind of looking at this, there's something called vacation too. Just knowing that the vacation is a little bit better, it takes it completely off your record, whereas expungement might just have it sealed, so it's not easily accessible. But good question. Anyone else have questions? Okay. All right, it is my pleasure to introduce our two navigators. So I'm going to have Christy and Allison come up from the link and Tubman. We're going to have Allison come up, and she's going to tell you about her services and how you can get in touch with her.
All right, as Lauren said, my name is Allison Darlene, and I am the navigator out of Tubman. I am the navigator for the 6 East Metro counties. So those counties include Anoka, Chisago, Isanti, Dakota, Ramsey, and Washington. So if you have youth in that area, Tubman and myself would be the navigator to contact if you need help navigating through the systems that Lauren is talking about. And then just a little bit about Tubman's history. As an organization, Tubman has been serving this population for over 40 years. We do have 24/7 access to shelter, basic needs, safety planning, and we also have youth development and designs and approach for youth that have been sexually exploited. As Lauren was saying, a lot of times if you have someone that's over the age of 18 and you still need somewhere to refer them, we have what we call our youth and young adult program that does go up to age 24. So I can speak on behalf of Tubman that we do, in fact, have programs that kind of make sure that that's encompassed as well. And then we do have our Movement for Violence Prevention program, MVP. The students named it. It's a leadership program, talking about what violence is to students, and then they can take that back and kind of have that conversation in their communities, what violence looks like to them, and then how to just be a leader. One thing we know is if exploitation or some sort of abuse is happening, student-to-student peer interaction is far more likely to be the disclosure than disclosing up to an adult. So that's kind of where we get at with that piece. We also have violence and prevention 6-week healthy relationships curriculum in our schools. It's in 40 schools right now, talking about safe, healthy relationships, teen issues, life skills, that sort of thing. We do approach the use of violence and the experience of violence ecologically, knowing that there are intersections between using and experiencing violence and exploitation. And then our staff has a focus on complex trauma, diversity, and then victim-centered services. And then we just have a comprehensive continuum of services as well. Again, just to reiterate, we do have 24/7 access to some of those crisis triage needs, basic food, shelter, housing, safety planning over the phone if perhaps they have a safe place to stay or they don't want to come into shelter but still want the additional safety support. We can provide that 24/7. We also have 2 text line options. One thing we know with youth that they almost always have a way to text someone, even if it's not their own cell phone, they have access to that, and that seems to be a low barrier way of connecting with services. Maybe it's a little more scary to pick up a phone and call, but sending a text is just a low barrier way. Again, that's important to note that that's not a crisis line, so if they're in crisis, accessing 24/7 phone line would be the way to go. We also have other various options of ways that our young people engage. We also have a website that's it's called mydefinition.org, and it just talks about the youth's definition of what violence is, and that's a great way to kind of engage with our youth. And then we also do outreach and training as well. Kind of Tubman as a whole approach, we kind of have these different programmings. As Lauren mentioned, we do have more of that longer term housing coming up for youth in March, starting in March, and we have legal services for 13 plus, counseling and therapy for all ages, and youth and family programs to give a holistic look at what victims are going through and perhaps their family or concerned others. And then we also have community education that goes on as well. And I can pass this on to Christy.
Hello. So I kind of like to start off when I do trainings trying to have you guys understand the broad approach that I think I've learned being an employee with the youth and then subsequently learned in my role as a navigator. So how many of you in here are married, have a partner, have children, have all of that? Raise your hand. Okay, fair share of you. So I want you to know that today I'm here to be your navigator. I'm here to rescue you, love that word, from the turmoil of your said relationship. So the children that are getting on your nerves, your significant other that maybe you're like, seriously, if you squeeze that toothpaste from the wrong section again, I'm done. If I see your socks on the floor again, I'm out of here. Who's ever had those moments? I expect everyone to raise their hand. We've all had those moments, right? So I'm your navigator. I'm here to rescue you. I'm here to take you away from the dullness of that situation, the harmfulness of what is happening to your soul by this other person. Now, some of you maybe had a bad night last night and you're thinking that might not be a bad idea. But then there's some of you that are going, okay, she's totally out of her mind. The navigator needs a vacation, right? Okay? Because you don't want to leave. And why don't you want to leave? You love them, but what else? There's a word I'm looking for.
I was going to say it's the devil you know.
The devil you know. Yes, that too. But it's your normal. It's what you've come to know as your reality and as your world. So when I kind of work with youth and I approach them, I try to approach them from the idea of that's their normal. I can't walk up to them and say, he's bad. They're going to look at me like, yeah, kick rocks, lady. So I have to approach it of a place of trauma-informed. I have to approach it from a place of harm reduction of this is your normal. I can't come in a stranger off the street and try to tell you all of a sudden this is no longer your normal because I'm an adult and you're a kid and you have to do what I say. I'm done before I even get another word out of my mouth. So I try to approach it from that kind of place of trauma-informed. I am the center point of contact for sexually exploited youth, Hennepin, Scott, and Carver County. If any of you ever called me lately and I didn't get back to you in 24 hours, I apologize. It's been a little hectic. I do screening for sexually exploited youth. So if you have that youth that you were working with and you're going, I don't know, something doesn't quite seem right here. I think there's more going on than I realize. You feel free to give me a call and I will do my very best to get to that youth as quickly as possible. It doesn't always happen, but I will work really, really hard at it. I also do the screening for Passageways, which is the shelter located out in Prior Lake. So if a youth is really saying that, hey, I need a place to stay, or you have one of the systems saying we need a place for this youth to stay, because that unfortunately does happen as well, then you can give me a call. We can talk about a wait list. We can talk about whether or not it's a good fit for that youth. Safety needs and assessment. During that process, I will also try to talk with the youth about what they think about their safety. And what I think safety and what they think safety is might be very different. So it's going to just be a very general, where do you sleep at night? Is there any harm? Just leaving it very simple so that we don't get into this person's scary, I don't want to have a conversation. Crisis intervention. For now, I am 24/7. I am the only navigator in this area right now, so I am 24/7. So if a youth has my number and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and they call me to say I'm in Iowa, gosh darn it, I'm getting them out of Iowa. And so the kids know that they can call me and do that. Thank God it hasn't happened a ton, but it has happened. So the kids do have the card. They can call me anytime. I will answer the phone the best that I can to try to help them the best that I can. Sometimes that means getting them a bus ticket. I actually drove there once. So it really kind of depends on what's going on. Assistance with any basic needs and supplies. Like I'm sure many of you, I travel with soap and shampoo and underwear and bras and all that kind of basic needs and supplies. Mobile case management. So let's say that this happens more often with counties, but if you really are like, I have like 45 kids on my caseload, I don't know what else to do, I need help, then you can call me and I'm more than happy to try to step in, get to appointments, help kids get to court dates, sit there in the courtroom, help them process it, whatever is needed. I'm happy to try to assist, again, to the best of my ability. And advocacy. That court piece can be really scary for someone who's going in there because they see it as, am I about to be punished? Which is usually one of the things I lead with is that you are not in trouble. So letting them know that. I have had kids who have had other charges, those gun charges, those theft charges, and things like that. I will say that in Hennepin County, they've been pretty good about recognizing the exploitation and either dismissing or lowering those charges. Some cases it was so severe, they just weren't willing to completely get rid of it, but in a lot of cases I've seen that kind of go away. Coordinations with systems, so I do a lot of work with child welfare, children's mental health, which is an area that I'm extremely passionate about. The mental health community needs to be at the table. If these kids didn't come in with something, they're going out of it with some serious PTSD. And we also have to talk about the historical trauma. We know racially who's being exploited. We need to talk about that. And we need to work with the youth when they're experiencing that and helping them process that piece. Intake and referrals into Passageways, as I mentioned. So if the youth is in need of shelter, we have a wait list now. I try to rotate it and go through it and assess and make it make sense. Training and technical assistance. So all the navigators are trained to be speakers. And so in those 3 counties and outside when needed, I do go around and talk about my role as a navigator and kind of what's happening in the state of Minnesota. And I sleep once a week. And now it's Beth. Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank StreetWorks and all of you for having us. So for those of you, I recognize some of you in the room, longstanding StreetWorks members, and I'm happy to say I have been too. So I've been involved with, not to out myself on my age, but I've been involved with the StreetWorks Collaborative since 1999 in one way or another, and I just love street outreach. I'm so happy to be back, and I've always felt very strongly that street outreach is a really important part of providing support to young people, whether they're experiencing sexual exploitation or any kind of crisis really, or at risk of being homeless or experiencing homelessness. So anyways, thank you for having me today. I also want to acknowledge in this room, there's a lot of wisdom of sexual exploitation already, so I'm going to apologize if I'm repeating anything. I see a former outreach partner, Gina, over there, for example, who has done this outreach with me, Jasmine, Jen Dean, many of you. So sorry if I'm repeating things, folks. So what I want to do is, since I get the opportunity to work at the link, I first want to, and since I have your attention, I want to let you know what the link does, because prior to me working there, I knew that the link was always like my dream job, right? And I always wanted to work there, but I didn't know like all of the things that the link did. So just to really briefly explain, because I think they're all really tied in closely together, and I won't talk to you too much about this, but just to let you know, we have a juvenile justice division, which basically provides programming for young people that are basically doing things to survive. And what we do is, instead of putting them, doing a criminal justice response, we provide an alternative response. So we operate the Juvenile Supervision Center downtown in City Hall of Minneapolis, which is our largest juvenile justice alternative program. And what it is it's a place that's open 24/7. It's a safe place, and some of you may know about it, where young people between the ages of 10 and 17 can get dropped off for low-level offenses, status offenses, felony car theft. For some reason, MPD lets us take those, and which is great. And then also youth who have been potentially exploited. So law enforcement drops off the youth with our staff, and then we provide, voila, positive youth development, strength-based response instead of a punitive correctional response. And we really work with the young person to find out what they want with their life, what's going on that we can maybe support them with and help them from a positive and strength-based perspective versus putting them in juvenile detention and responding punitively. We also have a School Matters program, which is the truancy intervention program. So youth who have been missing from school are referred to us. And again, we know that they're not bad kids. There's no such thing as a bad kid, right? But we know that there's probably some reason why they're missing school. So we want to figure out what that is and help them get the support that they need to resolve those issues. A lot of times, frankly, it's homelessness or housing instability. So we do a ton of homeless prevention work within School Matters and our Juvenile Supervision Center program. Sometimes we also see youth that are being taken out of state and different places or out of town by pimps, traffickers, and that's the reason they're missing school. So all this is all very interrelated, as all of you wonderful outreach workers know. We have a parent support program, which is a culturally specific program for African American parents that have youth who have been to our JSC or School Matters program. That came at a request to the link from those parents. They really wanted a program for themselves, so they helped to basically design it. It's a really great program, provides a lot of support. It provides a lot of homeless prevention, so we provide like financial assistance for rental arrears or utilities, just trying to help them out basically. Parenting's tough. Girls Club, we are actually opening, I'll go back for 1 second. We have evening reporting centers. So youth that have done a little bit higher level offense, gun possession, let me see here, drug trafficking, higher degree assaults. Those are youth that are referred to our evening reporting centers, typically by their probation officer. And then what we look at that program is, again, a very positive youth-based response to youth who are higher level offenders. I don't like that word, but, and then what we do is we provide restorative justice, positive youth development, strength-based programming. Instead of those youth going into the juvenile detention center, again, they come to the link. And then because in that particular program, we have one in Brooklyn Park and one in Richfield, we're seeing mainly boys. There's a couple girls, they could really hold their own. But what we wanted to do was because there weren't too many girls in that program, we wanted to kind of create a separate gender-specific program for girls that are involved in the juvenile justice system. And if you've been watching trends, there's more girls getting involved in the juvenile justice systems lately across the country. So we are developing Girls Club, which may be renamed by the youth, we'll see. So that one is opening in April. And I just want to take one step back and say the link is really, for those of you that have worked with me before, you know that I only know as much as what youth tell me. And so basically, I always have had the philosophy throughout my career to hire and partner with young people versus us as youth workers doing things to young people. And so have at the link, the good fortune, we have 4 different advisory committees of youth that oversee, they basically co-design any program that we have, oversee it, and give me lists of things I need to do almost daily, which is great, through text messages or emails or talking to me. But they really do, and they're paid, so they're paid part-time staff. So at the link we have 127 staff. I'm really happy to say that 36 of them are youth staff, and they provide amazing leadership to our organization. We would not be where we are without them. They co-found our programs, like I said, oversee. They help interview staff. They picked out Christy, our regional navigator. There was several people that interviewed for that position, and the youth were like, nope, she just wrote a paper on sex trafficking. She'd get eaten alive. And then Christy walked in, and they all loved her and felt like she could really, and guess what? It's true. Youth do love her. So at any rate, so we definitely have partner with youth because that's the best thing to do. And then we also have a traditional board of directors that also has some youth on it. Housing and Homeless Youth Services Division. This is where you as outreach workers probably know us most often because you're doing similar services. We have 6 housing programs for young people experiencing homelessness. 4 are for single, what we call unaccompanied homeless youth. So we have Lindquist Apartments in North Minneapolis, 24 units. Lincoln Place in Eagan, 24 units for youth 16 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness. Rapid Rehousing, which is mainly in Hennepin County but can be throughout the 7-county metro area. Those are scattered site units right now, although we are looking into getting some buildings. So we provide rental subsidies for the youth and provide supportive services in-house, in their own apartments or in the community. The Young Families Program is 36 units of scattered site housing and services for parenting youth, and we define parenting youth in a lot of different ways. So it can be a single mother, a single father, both, co-parents, same-sex families. It's all good. We don't have any weird restrictions on that. Project Live Out Loud is we're really excited. We're opening that March 1st, and it's a culturally specific rapid rehousing program for youth that are experiencing homelessness and identify somewhere along the rainbow, LGBTQ. Had several youth when I started at the link up in my ear saying, Beth, if you're gay and you're the ED, why don't we have a gay program? And I'm like, oh, that's such a good point. So now we're finally opening it. So we're really excited about that, and it's in partnership with Avenues, if you probably know about them. So they're developing Rocky and Ryan Berg over there are developing a short-term host home program. So young people that don't need, a super long time that they need to be in a housing program will get referred to Avenues. Longer term, they'll be referred to us. If they identify as LGBTQ and don't want to be in a culturally specific housing program, that's cool because we have 5 other ones that they can go into. And then, again, that one's also being, of course, co-designed by our Project Live Out Loud Advisory Committee members. CORE Drop-In Center and the Street Outreach Program. I'd like to point out that I finally got Zach Wolfgram to come to the link after about 2 years of trying. So I'm really lucky to be able to work with him. He's a great leader in our field, and so he has done incredible work with us at the link to basically develop our drop-in center in Apple Valley called CORE, and then also our street outreach program, and I am so thankful that you're doing that. We couldn't ask for better leadership on that. And we have youth working in both of those programs as well as peer outreach workers. You probably met some of them, and in our drop-in center. So those are all in a nutshell our homeless youth programs. We also do, I should mention, we also do coordinated entry in Dakota County right now. Safe Harbor Division, which is what we're really here to talk about today. So you talked about, and I just have to take a step back and say, Lauren Ryan, we're really lucky to have her as our statewide director because she has an incredible amount of patience for working with a vast variety of stakeholders that have very, very different viewpoints. And so from county attorneys to U.S. attorneys, law enforcement, child protection, juvenile justice, people like me that are like, don't lock up those youth. So she has a lot of different different stakeholders that she has this incredible grace and patience with and advocates always for the best interests of the youth throughout the creation of this process. So I just have to say we're very lucky, and I often admire her patience, and I need to work on my own. So thank you. So Safe Harbor Division, Christy really talked about the West Metro Regional Navigator. What I'd like to say is before we hired her, I was this position for 2 months, a whole 2 months. And it is a really amazing yet really tough job. She does it way better than I do because I was also trying to do a bunch of other things, and she's just better. But what I was going to say is that we're very fortunate. So what happened, as Lauren said, is that this safe harbor thing is new, fairly new to our state. So it should have happened like 50, 100, 200 years ago, right? We should have never been treating young people as perpetrators, or frankly adults either. But at this point, we're finally starting to catch up a little bit on this issue of social justice. And what we've learned throughout the process is, even though the West Metro is a small region to be assigned to a regional navigator because it's Hennepin, Scott, and Carver, there's very high numbers of young people that get referred to us. It's a higher population center. Not saying that there aren't high numbers in other areas, but we've just seen, one of the things we learned was that our regional navigator response, and it looks different depending on this. The beautiful thing about the regional navigator's responses is, and it's different depending on what region of the state you're in. However, in the West Metro, the biggest level of work that Christy does is really direct service with youth. And so we're very fortunate that we've secured funding to add an additional position. That position is, her name's going to be Bethany Maskey, but she'll be the Safe Harbor Mobile Case Manager, and she's actually our case manager from the Passageways Shelter that is now promoted to work in partnership with Christy. So we'll have 2 FTEs dedicated to doing crisis response and mobile case management. And just so you all know, we do have a on-call system and response with our regional navigator. So we try to not have Christy answer her phone all the time. Sometimes she doesn't listen because you know how it is when you're a dedicated youth worker and you want to help everybody. So anyway, so that's kind of, but I think what'll help is like getting this additional person on board, and they work really well together now, and I think we'll make a great team. So we're lucky to we'll have Bethany and Christy. Okay, so passageways we'll get into in a minute. So we have, for those of you, I kind of grew up in my career working within street outreach, case management, emergency shelter, and housing for young people experiencing homelessness. And during that time, I oftentimes felt like we were not always serving young people who had experienced sexual exploitation well, because it's really tough. It's a tough trauma. And so now what's really great through Safe Harbor is that we have dedicated, specialized programs for those young people. Not to say that they don't show up at Hope Street still or avenues, but it's really great to have those options. And so we'll get into that as well as the other services. So Christine, did you want to talk about, so I wanted to say that I have 2 of our co-founders of Passageways here, Christine Bristol and Fawn, the move over here. And I'll let them introduce themselves, and also they're going to help me explain the program that they co-founded with us at the link.
Well, hi, I'm Christine. I'm on the advisory board with the link for Passageways. Excuse me. So, I guess most of this we already talked about, but Safe Harbor, no wrong door response. They could come multiple ways to us. They could self-refer. They could show up at our front door. They could go through child protection, law enforcement, Christy, a friend. Basically, however you get to us, we're here to serve them. Academic researches, well, that list will be later. Us, the Survivor Advisory Committee, like Beth said, we oversee the Passageways program and the whole Safe Harbor division, kind of. And we do trainings, and we come out and talk to law enforcement, CPS, DHS, everybody that's involved in the youth's lives, or that will come in contact with them. And we, best practices for working with sexually trafficked victims, positive youth development, coming from a victim survivor leader model, trauma-informed care, harm reduction, no further harm. Basically just come with openness, a caring, loving, nurturing environment, and just the best for them, and don't no longer harm them. Like PSD, yes, bringing them into a whole, this CPS law thing is going to be, it's a lot. We're making changes. We're changing minds. Multidisciplinary approach, informed lead information learned from other states. We did a lot of, with bush filament and gems as well from New York. Staff experiences, I guess that's basically all of our staff at Passageways had dealt with been in the juvenile justice, come from other shelters, or survivors themselves. So that alone, that I think makes the biggest impact on the youth, because we see them all day. We're the one feeding them, waking up, going to school. So to have that connection, and I think that our staff is one of the reasons passive wage really works. And feedback from everybody, anybody. We get emails from social workers, police officers, kids themselves even tell us kids tell the judges they want to come back to passage ways. Like that, just those words makes a difference. So from everybody, we're making some changes. Hopefully we could help you guys to make some changes in the youth lives that you guys work with.
Thank you. That was really good.
I think this is fun.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to say is that, I want to just give credit to, when we were developing No Wrong Door, I happened to have the good fortune of also receiving a Bush Fellowship. So I was able to travel around the country and visit other states that had passed safe harbor laws and who had implemented systemic responses within their communities for providing a response to sexually exploited youth. So I did that. These are the places I went. It was a really fun year of my life. And thankfully my job, I had lots of PTO saved up with my job. But we learned a lot, and we also brought that in, and that combined with the, and I also want to say StreetWorks was, when we developed the No Wrong Door that Lauren was talking about, StreetWorks was at that table, as well as Lutheran Social Services and a bunch of other agencies. So it was different people then. It was Matt Leisure and Trudy, Abel Peterson, but just so you know, StreetWorks was involved. Okay, so just really quickly, I'll just talk about this quickly. So we are a partner, fortunately, within the No Wrong Door and Safe Harbor. We're also part of the Runaway and Homeless Youth Services Continuum and partners with all of you, and I think that's really critical, as well as juvenile justice. So that's been a really great partnership. And we work in close partnership with other agencies because, as Christy mentioned, we're not always full, we usually are. So for those of you that send me emails saying we haven't updated on the YSN app, it's usually because we're full, and Christy's got like 2 or 3 lined up. But at any rate, we work in close partnership with the other partners, which Lauren already mentioned, because we know that we need more than our 6 emergency shelter beds and 5 units of long-term housing for youth that have experienced sexual exploitation, and all of you know that very well as well. And so we'll talk more, and we actually have a video of, to show you the shelter, just so that in case you're wondering what these programs are all about, is that, we have 6 emergency shelter beds. They're actually individual rooms for any gender. So we don't have, like a lot of programs, not all, but some programs are really specific for girls, but we actually serve boys and transgender youth as well. For the shelter side, we typically serve 13 to 17, although we can go younger if needed. And then on the housing side, we serve 16 to 24th birthday. So we have other funds that help provide some funding for those older youth in housing, and then they can be parenting with 1 child. And that one is actually supportive housing. Youth can stay as long as they need to. I think that's it. Yep, okay. Okay, so now we're gonna show you a video so you can actually see it instead of listening to us talk.
The Link is a 24-year-old nonprofit organization based out of North Minneapolis that provides services for youth throughout the Twin Cities metro area.
Passageways is a shelter for young people who have been sexually exploited. We serve male, female, and transgender youth.
Because we know any youth can be a victim of sex trafficking.
And the goal of being in the shelter is to gain security, to be safe, and to either reunify them with their parents or find a longer-term option after they leave here. On the shelter side, we serve youth that are between the ages of 13 and 17.
Our emergency shelter program has 6 beds, and they're actually individual rooms that provide emergency shelter for up to 90 days. Our housing side is an unlimited length of stay. We have 5 one-bedroom apartments for sex-trafficked youth between the ages of 16 and 24. Within the Passageways shelter and housing program, there are a variety of on-site supportive services.
We provide case management, mental health therapy. We also have nurses that come on site to do health screenings for the youth and to just manage their overall health.
We also have an on-site school in partnership with the Prior Lake School District. And then we also have a survivor mentor program. So we believe strongly in survivor leadership and voice, and we hire survivors on our staff. The actual facility itself is wonderful because it has a lot of space. It's a really large building.
So here is the lobby area. We want it to be warm and inviting. We don't want it to look institutional. So when youth walk in to our program, we want them to see a smiling face at the front desk.
We also have room on site for a significant number of staff offices, which it takes to run these programs.
This hallway is the hallway where the shelter rooms are. If you look into the rooms, you can see that each youth, they kind of have a splash of their personality, and we love it because to me this is an example of this young lady, and she's not in an institution. One of our survivor advisory members thought about how Harriet Tubman led people from slavery to freedom. And the next thing was passageways, because you're leading these youth from the darkness and the despair of being exploited to freedom and living a healthy life.
So there's a lot of meaning behind a lot of the names at Passageways.
This is the great room. At any given time, you'll see groups being conducted with the youth, or you'll see the youth lounging here in the living space. As you can see, we have a few game tables. We also have a mental health therapist, and his office is there with a couch. He conducts individual therapy and also group therapy for the kids. We have family-style dining, 3 meals a day. We cook the food for the youth here in the program. Sometimes the youth participate in the meals.
In the back half of the building, we have the 5 one-unit apartments, as well as a housing lounge space, and we also have private bathrooms and shower facilities as well.
The idea behind this facility is to create a warm, inviting space where youth can feel safe.
Passageways made a big difference. This is an actual place to where sexually exploited youth have somewhere to go instead of going back on the streets. This is a place that stops that.
Before the Lincoln Passageways, I was homeless, I was drug addicted, I was angry, I didn't have any support and too many options, and it gave me a support system. It helped me get clean off drugs. I got a place to stay. I got a job. I'm back feeling positive and wanting to do the things that I always wanted to do but was too depressed or oppressed to do.
It means more than I could say. It's somewhere where you don't have to worry about someone judging you or someone being disrespectful to you or someone manipulating you.
It means a lot because when I was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, there wasn't nobody to help me. You know what I'm saying? Those years are critical. And I done lost a lot of years, and to know that I'm helping somebody be able to correct the mistakes that I made before it was too late, that's good. I feel good. I feel like I wish it was a program when I was 16, 17, you know what I'm saying? And not grown and going through the stuff I'm going through. It just means a lot to even have a program open, whether I help create it or not, for sexually exploited youth.
All of those things don't matter anymore, and being here is it's like you have a family. And I love it.
The reason we do a biggie like that is because it is tough, as you know, that some of you work in emergency shelters for young people experiencing homelessness. It's tough to give tours of somebody's living space. So we did a video to try to be able to show people. Most of the youth too, there's a significant amount of trauma, and almost all of them have open investigations, so it's pretty also in terms of safety, there's a lot of safety risks. So I'm going to turn this over now to Fawn and Christine to talk about to briefly go over. Okay, yeah, make sure you hold it up.
Well, like we talked all the way through the slide, our youth will come from anywhere, and we're really, because we're in Dakota, Scott, Carver, Hennepin County, does not mean we only serve those youth. We do have youth that come from Brainerd, Duluth, Mille Lacs, all over Minnesota. So just because we're here and our regional navigator works with our youth here, does not mean we will not accept other youth anywhere else.
Passageways, we can serve any youth from anywhere in the state of Minnesota, or who's from Minnesota and was trafficked outside the state. Sorry, did you hear that? Sorry. So we can serve our West Metro Regional Navigator. Is provided services for the West Metro, but if someone's referring to Passageways, we can serve youth who have experienced sexual exploitation within our state or who are in a different state. Like we've taken referrals from Milwaukee FBI, for example, or Christy talked about one from Iowa that are from Minnesota but then are trafficked to a different state but are originally from here. So now I give it back to you.
Our main contact with our youth coming into Passageways is Christy Collier. She does all of our intake. Yeah, so she's our main person. We don't know nothing about the youth until Christy brings them to our door, or whoever it is that brings them to our door. Like previously said, that we do have backups for Christy, so she'll have to be on call 24/7. Backups will be Keisha for right now and Beth, and then like we spoke before, we'll have Bethany as our second mobile case manager.
The passageway supportive services are we have the emergency shelter. They can stay in there for up to 90 days with exceptions in some cases. And housing on our housing side, it's an unlimited length of stay. Sorry. Intensive staffing and case management, 1 case manager to 6 client ratio. Access to health and mental health assessment within 24 hours. Access to short and long-term healthcare services, on-site mental health therapy and family reunification therapy, on-site chemical dependency program, connection to education partnership with the Prior Lake School District with on-site education program, and our survivor mentorship program.
Yeah, this is everything we have inside Passageways, and a big question I get asked all the time is, how does this particular shelter and housing program designed specifically for youth who've experienced exploitation differ from your other housing programs that are designed for youth experiencing homelessness? So this is it, and then we have a lot of other safety features. It's not a locked facility, but we definitely have a lot of other safety features kind of designed in, and it's located out in Prior Lake, so it's outside of an area where youth can't tend to walk out like outside and get triggered because they see a former John or something like that. Sorry if anyone in here is named John, but that's kind of why we have it way out there. And then we also have a great partnership with the YMCA across the street that offers free memberships. I always forget about that part, to the young people in our programs, and we have a lot of volunteers and things like that. We also have I should mention also have additional services. So if a young person stayed at Passageways, or if they're working with our regional navigator, they can work with our mental health therapist, Peng Tao. He's awesome. If you don't know him yet, you should. And he can work with youth mobily while they're on Christie's caseload, or for as long as they need to afterwards. And the other great thing is he's working on developing a family program, because a lot of times parents are not, or caregivers are not necessarily part of the trafficking of their child. Some are, but some are not. And so they have a lot of trauma as well. And so he does a great job of really working with them and supporting them, as well as a young person, especially with our situations where youth move out of the shelter into reunifying with their family. And then we also have an aftercare and outreach program. So you may know Daniela Chavez. She's amazing. And she is our aftercare and outreach specialist who's a member of StreetWorks. And so the reason we have young people who are we've all worked with young people enough to know that crisis comes up all the time, not just for young people, but for adults. So just because they've been at Passageways doesn't mean that, and they leave our program successfully and safely, doesn't mean that another crisis doesn't pop up, or there's a relapse situation or something. And so we want really intentionally to have supportive aftercare for those young people. So Daniela works 1 shift in the Passageways shelter program to get to know all of the youth that are living in our shelter and housing program. And then she works with youth on their transition plan out of the program, and then basically acts like a Christy on the other end. She's basically the other end of Christy. Is that okay to say? Yeah? Okay. So basically, yeah, so she does a lot of crisis intervention. She does a lot of mobile case management. She also does outreach, because in my experience as an outreach worker, that is a really good place to find young people that are involved in the life, is by reaching out to them, because they're not going to necessarily come in and be like, hey, I'm a commercially sexually exploited child in need of services. So we have to do the due diligence of getting out there and building up those relationships with them, not the other way around. And then these are just some research articles and things like that, so we didn't just pull this out of nowhere. And then this is our names, yay. So that's pretty much it, but we're happy. We have 5 minutes left if people have questions. Sorry, it's not a ton of time, but. Yeah, oh, yes. Sure. Sure. Heather says, for sure, no problem.
Let them know if they have to be signed up. So anybody
Oh.
who sign up needs to sign up so they get that follow-up information.
Jim says you have to sign up because he's now the director of StreetWorks. Huh? Oh, cards. Oh, yeah. Yep, we can put cards over there too. Other questions? Jasmine, don't ask me a hard one. What is it? All right.
Just wondering if someone leaves Passageways successfully, are they still able to access you guys' programs, the mental health specialists? Okay.
Yes, and we have lots of youth that come back. And we serve lots of youth that are banned from other places. So anyways, so what I will say is we for sure are, and that's why if you think that we're crazy because we have 1 to 6 case manager, the reason is because we really want to intentionally provide intensive supports and have a lot of time to do appropriate de-escalation. We don't do holds or any of that crazy stuff. So that's why we have such high. And we have 2 to 3 staff on per shift in the shelter, which people also thought I was crazy about. And I was like, you have not worked a shift out there. So we're going to fundraise for those extras, right? So these 2 have. And so have I. So we need all of that additional staffing. And that's why we keep the program small and all of that. Okay. Yes. Okay, so I'll answer the first question first. So we have, Okay, so the question is, do you provide early childhood services and supports, basically, right, for parenting youth? Yes, we do. So we have an on-site young family specialist that works out of our young families program that can also work with the young people who are parenting at Passageways. We also have connections with the visiting nurses program and a few other programs out in Scott Carver County for young parents specifically. And we do a lot of field trips, we have connections with schools that are for younger youth out there, schools for parenting youth. So we do have a lot of specialized services for parenting youth, both within Passageways, but also our Young Families program on our homeless youth side. And then, let me see here, the other question, and we do the ages and stages assessments and all that good stuff for those of you that are like all into evidence-based curricula. And then we also, I'm sorry, what? Oh, no, that's okay. Oh, and child protection question. Yes, we work really, really closely with child protection. And so what's been pleasantly surprising about Hennepin, like no wrong door implementation is Hennepin, is that Hennepin County has taken on the interpretation of, yes, a sexually exploited youth is a mandated report, but then they use a child welfare response. And their child welfare response pretty much has been to call Christy in the link. And so that's great because what's happening then is they're not put through the traditional CHIPS process or traditional child protection process, but they have had social workers that are designated like Darian McCormick. There's like a couple other ones within Dale McCulley's unit that are specialized to work with this population. And basically what they do is they call us. And so it's a wonderful relationship. And Christy and our Passageways case manager, Bethany, who now we're going to have to hire for because Christy stole her, and Daniela work really closely with child welfare. Now, some other counties have been more challenging. I'm looking at Lauren. I'm not going to, because we work with all counties within the state. And so there are some counties that are more challenging than others. And I don't have time to explain that all, but if you ever are interested, we can. But basically, some counties are not as far along. And so, not that it's always perfect in Hennepin, but they do, I think, a really outstanding job and have been very, very good partners with us and have basically said, you know what, child protection, this isn't our role. You guys are the ones that are used to working with youth who have been so street engaged and involved in the life. So we're going to utilize your services. And frankly, a lot of times they will call us and be like, what do we do? So it's a great partnership, but not all counties have gotten to that point yet. So we're working on building those relationships with other counties and doing trainings with our expert staff and educating as much as possible. And sometimes I lose my patience, but I really try not to. Yeah. Uh-huh. In a 2-year time frame? Well, we haven't been open quite 2 years. So she's asking how many youth come back in a 2-year time frame. Is that what you're talking about? For passageways? So what I can say is, off the top of my head, the first year we were open, we served 47 youth, and 16 point something of those youth ran away, which meant actually that 84% didn't, which is pretty incredible. Because one of the things people told me all the time was, everyone's going to run away. And then of those 16% of youth that ran, so there was like 6 or 7 youth that ran, 7 youth ran, then over half of them kept in touch and then came back. Because even if a youth runs away or leaves, they can come back. Does that help answer your question? If you want more specific numbers to date, then we have this fun system called Apricot, and we can run it for you and, get all that stuff.